panelists onto the stage for such a great panel discussion, for which I would request my MC Joel to join me in welcoming the panelists.
So now let's get started with an interesting discussion on the topic that is most of youth like me and even everyone over here has eagerly waiting to know about: effects of COVID-19 on international education. But before getting started, let me give you an overview of our esteemed panelists and welcome them on board. Let us all welcome, and it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this discussion, Ms. Sakshi Mittal. Ms. Sakshi is the founder and CEO of a leading career counseling firm, University Leap. She holds a master's degree in psychology from University of Manchester, UK, and career counseling certifications from University of California, Los Angeles, British Psychological Society, and NCDA, USA. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So now let me introduce our 5 panelists. So at first, I would like to introduce Anju Singh, who is the Regional Director of Global Operations at University of Arizona. Anju has more than 20 years of extensive experience in the education management industry. She has proven record of building partnerships and managing recruitment and marketing for international higher education institutions. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So moving on to our second panelist, it's Mr. Pankaj Jain, who is Regional Director, India Subcontinent at University Technology, Sydney InSearch. He has 21 years experience in the international education, consulting and student recruitment. He has done his MBA from University Leeds, UK, and has also previously worked as a director of University of Leeds, UK South Asia office. We welcome you, sir. So let me introduce upon Mr. Aritra Ghoshal. Aritra, an alumnus of University of Sheffield, is the founder and director of OneStep Global. OneStep Global helps foreign education institutions to land and expand across Asia through in-country support and stakeholder management. Aritra has more than 12 years of work experience, and within that, he has worked for 8 years in overseas education. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So let me introduce Shivani Balla. She is the head of the South Asia region for Brunel University, London. She is responsible for its growth and recognition for the past 10 years. She has completed MSc Corporate Brand Management from Brunel University with a merit. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Joel. Lovely to be here.
Yes, ma'am. So let me move on to our final panelist, Nilanjana Shen. Nilanjana Shen is a senior advisor for Trinity College Dublin. Nilanjana is armed with over a decade of experience in international higher education sector. She also spent 9 years with London Metropolitan University, Liaison Office, India, where she holds a professional diploma in marketing from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK. So thank you all panelists. You're welcome to take over the session.
Hi, everyone. Firstly, on behalf of University Leap and 3G, I would like to welcome all panelists. Thank you for being here. A very warm welcome to all the participants, everybody viewing this on Zoom as well as YouTube. So the agenda for today's session is to discuss how COVID-19 has impacted the international education. As we all know, the ongoing pandemic has had a impact on all industries, but particularly when we talk about education, the international education segment has been impacted massively, as students have a lot of hesitation in going abroad. A lot of them are worried about a lot of things, that online classes are running, or will they be able to get the visa? Will their fees be refunded? Are online classes going to be as good as the physical classes on campus? So there have been a lot of factors there which have impacted this situation. So I would want to have my panelists speak about it, since we have a good mix of panelists who are representing universities from different countries like UK, USA, Australia, Ireland. So let's maybe take it one by one. And panelists, I would love to know your thoughts on it, that you've been working into this industry. How do you think this has impacted your recruitment strategies? And of course, you deal with students on a daily basis. So what are the challenges that you see for the international recruitment sector during this time? So Mr. Pankaj, if we can start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Sakshi. Good morning to everybody and good afternoon now, practically to join everybody. I think we have to understand the basic fact that all students who are looking to study abroad, the basic intention, what has been surveyed is that students want to go abroad, they want to work there, they want to settle down there. So around 70% of the students who want to study abroad are looking at avenues to settle down there. This has been the major focus, I would say, for the last 20 years for all the students who are going abroad. And obviously, they're looking at value for money, the return for investment, what they do. They're looking for part-time jobs also. They're looking for good scholarships also, and the value, the return for money, which I just said. So if the universities are able to package as of now, because obviously with COVID coming in, things have changed a lot. There are options of online learning. So if you see the Indian subcontinent, the regions we are based in, our students are not very friendly with doing online learning. This has not been the mode for a long time. So because of COVID, so a lot of universities are offering scholarship. A lot of universities are saying that you study 6 months online with us, and then you can come over. But the main issue still there is that unless there is a reduction in the online fees, that the students will not easily take over the new projects which they're looking at. So we have to understand the students from the psychic of the student and the parent. Because as of now, the COVID is there everywhere. So people are asking, what about part-time jobs? What about full-time jobs? Even yesterday, I had a talk with a student. He was saying, sir, what after job after 2 years? I said, 2 years is a long time. You still study for 2 years in Australia. And then by 2023, things will improve. But if you see the student is concerned that I'm investing 40 lakh rupees, so what is the ROI I get back? So we have to understand that thing, that what is the mindset of students. Universities as a university will try to promote their USP, their scholarship, their online learning, their Facebook and all. But the parents and students have a different perception to what they are looking at.
All right. Thank you for that. So next, if we move to Shivani, who represents the University of Brunel. Shivani, can you elaborate a bit more on how things are for you? Have you been facing similar challenges like Mr. Pankaj said, or it's a completely different view from your side?
Thank you, Sakshi, and thank you for inviting myself to be here. I think it's a great start to the Sunday. Um, I think it is slightly different from what Mr. Jain said. So at in the UK, I think they took an opportunity for the lockdown to announce and confirm the GIR, which is the graduate immigration route, where students could get a 2-year stay back once they would have finished their undergraduate or their postgraduate degree after the summer of 2021. I could talk about Brunel, of course, when the pandemic really hit us in March end. April onwards, when we would talk to students, they would feel a lot of resistance in online learning, in taking classes online. And in the last 4 months, we've actually seen them adapt to change. So I think Indian students by far in the world are the most adjusting and the most creative in that aspect. So now we see a transition where our numbers from last year are more than 90%. Which is a very comforting feeling. So we haven't seen a drop in numbers or enrollments or students confirming their admission. I think what they are looking out from us as universities is complete transparency and honesty on how the mode of delivery will be. So for example, with Brunel, we're doing a combination of two things. One is a dual delivery, which means that the courses will run online as well as with certain campus learning simultaneously. So if a student is unable to travel due to travel restrictions, they could still continue to take the course online. However, we are more than welcome. We're ready to welcome them on campus as well. Blended learning this year would mean that the large lectures would be online purely because of social distancing and not to compromise on their health and safety. But the small group tutorials, group sessions would have an option of being taken face to face, physically on campus, or face to face via mediums like Zoom. And students are happily adapting to it. We see a little bit of difference among undergraduates and postgraduates. The undergraduates are the young ones, 16, 17-year-olds. So they're feeling that they could maybe take the first semester online and travel to London in the beginning of the new year when things would have hopefully calmed down and we should have life back to the new normal. And the postgraduates are the ones who are looking at more campus interactions. So the UK opened up the visa application centers from 6th of July. Visas are taking place. Yesterday was great news. British Airways announced its flights from Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. Air India was flying anyway. SpiceJet has also booked slots at Heathrow Airport. So I think slowly it's all kind of getting back, and I think students are starting to appreciate it. So I think the sun seems to be shining.
Right. As Shivani said, and I think to an extent I agree with her that in the initial phases we had seen a lot of resistance. But I think as the world is changing, people are getting more adapted to technology, because that's something that, they've kind of accepted that at least for the next 1 year, whether they study in India, whether they study abroad, blended learning is going to be something that's going to happen for a long time. So I think, yes, the acceptance is definitely coming there. Over to Aritra. Aritra, you, of course, work with a lot of Ireland universities as well as consult for a lot of other universities around the world. So, do you see any particular challenges that are coming in the student recruitment center, and how you think that, those are being tackled by the universities?
Okay, firstly, thank you very much, for inviting me, and good afternoon to all of you. I think the challenge is, how do you get onto their aspiration, because this is an aspiration selling. So a student who is planning to go for September 2020, they have thought about it for at least 1.5 years or 2 years. Now suddenly, you go into a blended learning, or you go into a mode which is online, offline. There is a little setback for a student, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't want to travel. They have been thinking about this for at least 18 months, 24 months, that I'll go to London or Dublin or Melbourne or Sydney. So I think universities should adapt to this. Universities should be more flexible, and universities are, as Shivani said, and I'm sure, as Pankaj also said, that universities are also getting into more flexible modes. They're allowing people to travel as and when they can. Slowly, things are looking up. There are air bubbles. Air India is flying. Virgin Atlantic is flying. SpiceJet has booked, so people will travel. I think there is still a little bit of a uncertainty among parents, maybe, and younger students, that what if they go and they catch the infection. And there's a little bit of uncertainty, or I would not say uncertainty, but a little bit of prejudice among the people who are there. So let's talk about Ireland or UK, smaller countries, and if they all of a sudden they see that 5,000, 10,000, or 20,000 students coming in from different parts of the world where the COVID-19 numbers are quite high, that actually creates a little bit of prejudice, which Indian students or students from anywhere where they are traveling for should understand, and should not blame the locals who are residing there. They should follow the government guidelines that they have been asked for, because the challenge is not to go right now from India. The challenge is to go there and blend with a new normal which is there. So I think the responsibility is towards the universities, and the responsibility is towards lies a little bit with the students as well, I think.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Aritra, for those, wonderful insights. Now, Nilanjana, I was reading, often that, Ireland has been very supportive in terms of supporting the international students. In fact, I had two students who were telling me that when the pandemic was at the peak, the government themselves were, in fact, paying the students who had lost their jobs, and many such programs like that. So, Ireland seems to have been handling this situation quite well. So can you throw a little bit of more light on that how are Irish universities, Trinity College Dublin and other universities actually supporting students both in terms of the academics as well as for their finances during this time?
Sure. Thank you, Sakshi, and thank you very much for having me on the panel. So I'll start with the first part of the question, that about the impact of the COVID-19. I would think that yes, it has affected international student recruitment considerably, largely due to the uncertainty and also the fact that the situation continues to evolve to this day. In addition, we face significant disruptions and delays, such as the class 12th exams, as well as the university final exams, which were impacted. And this presented a major challenge for international student recruitment. On the other hand, we also discovered some positives like technology, which has come to play a very decisive role in the situation, as it has ensured continuity of academics for our current students. And in the business world also, it has helped people collaborate in creative ways through various virtual events. And as far as myself and all our colleagues here in the overseas education sector, travel is a key element of our work. And during the lockdown, technology has helped to prevent that disruption of operations and enabled us to remain in touch and maintain the connection with various stakeholders, be it our students, parents, or our colleagues in other countries. And of course, technology is extremely cost effective and also saves time. And I'm sure in the future, education industry can also continue to draw these benefits that technology offers to support its endeavors. Now, going back to the second part, as far as Ireland is concerned, the pandemic had reached the country on 29th of Feb, and it had spread to all counties within 3 weeks. However, by mid-April itself, Irish government had declared that the curve had flattened and there would not be any peak that would be coming. And due to this successful handling of the pandemic, Ireland has been ranked in 6th place among countries that are responding best to the COVID-19 crisis with innovative solutions, whereas Dublin has come at the 13th place in the city-wise ranking. And the main reason, I believe, for Ireland's performance, which is such a strong performance in this ranking, is due to the presence of Europe's premier cluster medical device companies and over 300 biotech, pharma, and biopharma companies. So Ireland had devised a careful, slow 5-stage lifting of lockdown, which came into effect on 18th May, and the final phase 5 commencing on 10th August. However, Ireland has almost fully exited the lockdown by end of June itself and bypassing 2 of the 5 phases of planned unlock. Now, coming to Trinity, we were the first public body in Ireland to introduce lockdown measures, and almost overnight, our classes and all teaching went online, and for the remaining part of the semester, students completed their learning, their assessments and examinations online. And important university events such as graduation have been delivered online. And wherever possible, in-person exams were converted to essay or assignment based. And all staff, particularly the faculty members, were trained extensively across various platforms for seamless teaching as well as assessment. Basis all these measures that we undertook earlier this year, I would say that Trinity is now better equipped, suitably experienced, and ready to welcome our students. So for the upcoming intake, we have pushed the start date of our teaching terms for both undergraduate and postgrad students by about 4 weeks. We are also planning all aspects of the coming academic year, ensuring that all public health guidelines are met. At the same time, the key vision driving all our measures is to ensure that the value and reputation of our degrees are not diminished while offering our students maximum protection possible from any disadvantage that this pandemic brings. In terms of teaching for the upcoming intake, we will be providing a hybrid model which combines online and face-to-face elements, where large lectures will be online and small group teaching, tutorials, and lab classes will be in person. As much face-to-face teaching and learning as possible will be provided under prevailing health and safety requirements, which reflects our belief that personal interaction between students and also between students and lecturers is a vital component of a Trinity education. At the same time, we do acknowledge that social distancing is going to be a part of the way we live, at least for the coming academic year, and we are preparing the campus to enable this. So there are several measures that the Irish universities as a sector are taking. One is that at the moment we are considering to charter flights for Indian students as well as Chinese students, which are the countries which have been hugely impacted. And this is also coming from the fact that the Irish Visa Office is not processing the short-term visitor visa applications. Therefore, parents, particularly of the undergraduate students, are not able to accompany their children. And in addition, in Ireland, there is going to be a 14-day restricted movement upon arrival. So that is also being arranged by the universities. All of these things are under consideration and they are on the final stages. So these are the kind of supports that Ireland is providing to its students. And going back earlier when the COVID had struck, yes, Irish government was perhaps one of the very few in the world which had offered emergency payment of 350 euros on a weekly basis to any international student who lost their job because of the pandemic. And also they were given free access to Irish healthcare facilities if they were impacted by COVID-19. And my understanding is that these provisions will be extended in the future as well. However, in the end, I would also like to say that the situation is still fluid. and it continues to develop as we are receiving guidelines from Irish government about the protocols to be followed.
All right. Thank you, Nilanjana. I think that was a wonderful insight as to how the Irish education system is handling the entire COVID situation. Now, quickly coming on to Anju from University of Arizona. Of course, you know, US has been one of the most preferred destination for students, but there have been continuous, news that is being popping up that the major reason why students are opting out is something about that they have an anxiety towards whether or not they will get a post-study work visa or not. And in fact, even for US universities, a lot of them have taken a good initiative about blended learning. So can you throw some light on as to how US universities are handling this situation? Particularly, I think we were talking the other day about University of Arizona, how they've kind of brought in a program where the first year can be done in India. So what are the advantages of that, and how will it actually impact the post-study work visa in US? If you can throw some light on that. I think we are getting some questions about that as well, that all right, we will study online, that's not a problem, but then what about the post-study visa? So over to you, Anju.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sakshi there. Thanks for the opportunity, and good afternoon to everyone who is joining us today and devoting a beautiful Sunday morning to this discussion. So, of course, everyone has, shared their views. I sort of agree with everything what that's talking about. The challenges that we're talking about is online challenges, uncertainties, more student initiatives needs to be taken, and more mergers and partnerships would happen, in my view, in future. But, well, I don't have to tell you, but the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, basically for higher education institutions, is tremendous, and it's beyond measure. And especially in the United States, of course, it's been the worst hit, and it's the epicenter of the pandemic currently. So a lot of universities are taking measures to ensure that the students can start their studies online. To be very frank, I mean, of course, when we talk about the Ivy Leagues and the top institutions like Harvard, Princeton, Johns Hopkins, Cornell, they're all planning to go online in the fall semester, which would be starting anytime now. And they would also be offering hybrid study models, especially since I am from University of Arizona. In fact, we were one of the universities to gauge the severity of the situation well in advance. And what we did is we offered this program, which is called University of Arizona Global Campus. So this program concept has been developed for several years, but because when we realized that pandemic is not going to go anywhere soon, we accelerated the expansion and the process, and we were able to launch the program in the month of May itself, right? So much before any other university globally took any step beyond that, so I believe. So basically what is going to happen in University of Arizona Global Campus is we would be allowing students to, especially at an undergrad level, start their studies online. So this online study could be from the comfort of your homes, or studying at one of our partner institutions. For example, those of you who are in the North India would be able to do it in OP Jindal Global University, which is a partner university of University of Arizona. And in South, we have tied up with Amrita University, which has 6 campuses across South India. And the latest addition in the list is 91 Springboard, which is basically a co-working space, which has about 27 centers in the entire India. So we would allow students to take up their online classes, especially the asynchronous ones, like the recorded sessions, in these centers, make use of free Wi-Fi, a safe and secure environment, and at the same time be in touch with the corporate, because these hubs or centers would be basically Arizona locations, and you would be in a position to collaborate with the various corporates who are working in these these co-working spaces. So make use of that, do your online classes, and then transit to the US anytime when you are able and ready. For example, at an undergrad level, if a student is starting now, all the students who are starting in fall, which is starting on 24th of August, they would be initiating your studies here. And when the situation improves, it could be in spring of next year, it could be fall of next year. So up to 2 years, they can study in India and then take the entire course to the main campus, which is in Tucson. So it is totally students' choice here, and we will ensure that the transition is seamless. So also to add, this US undergrad studies generally is a 4 years degree. Everyone would know that, which is basically a mix of general education units and basic subjects they would be studying. So we are anticipating that the first 2 years that they will be spending here in India wouldn't be a trouble at all, because it would be general. And the moment they are ready to start the real course, which would be after 2 years, they will be transiting into the university. Now, the main component here, as Pankaj also mentioned, cost would be of a really, really important factor. You cannot charge students the full tuition fee when you are making them study online. So in that sense, University of Arizona is offering this degree at an undergraduate level for $7,000 per year as opposed to $37,000 per year, which is the main tuition fee. And for the grad students who want to study their master's program online fully would be $9,000 as opposed to $45,000 per year. So you can see there's a huge difference here. And considering the economic downturn, I'm sure this option would be really welcoming change for the students who are wanting to study in US. So that is what University of Arizona is doing. In terms of your second questions related to the post-study, of course, there's a lot of discussions around that and visas and everything. And the Trump administration has announced that they won't be, they have basically suspended the H-1B visas till December. So that's not related at all to you guys. So that's the good news. It's for the professionals who are seeking H-1B visas to work there in US. So for you guys who are wanting to study at an undergrad level or a master's level, the OPT would be there for the students, especially going for STEM courses, for example, which is sciences, technology, engineering, and math. You would be allowed to stay back in the US for next 3 years under OPT. So that's not affected. You would still be able to go for that. And hopefully by the time you complete your education, which could be 4 years down the line or 3 years down the line, you would be in a position to stay back, take experience, and then apply for your work visa, which companies would be doing all the paperwork for under H-1B. Hopefully things would be much, much better. Economies would start looking up. So chances looks really bright, and I'm sure we have to be positive in this situation and things would definitely change. So that's my take on the US education right now, Sakshi.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Anju. And taking from what Anju has said, I would really like Mr. Pankaj, Shivani, Aritra, and Nilanjana to maybe elaborate a bit on this. Has been a key question for most of the students, starting from you, Mr. Pankaj, that how are Australian universities? I know for a fact that, of course, we've all talked about how universities are offering blended learning, which is either, doing the first semester online, but a major, challenge that comes with that for us as education counselors who are guiding students for abroad as well, and like many of our attendees here, is the component of the fees, is when they say that we are not able to go to the campus because, of course, as much as online learning benefits and with other benefits that it has, that it brings down the cost of living, but at the end, a student is very hesitant in terms of paying the entire full tuition fees for an online learning module. So if you can give me your take on that how Australian universities also slashing down the fees for the online education. That's A. And I think there have been a lot of misconceptions or misinformation in those regards, that if a student takes an online education, they will not be given any post-study visa. So if you can quickly give me a take about Australian universities in those regards. A, about are they charging the full fees for the online modules, and will taking online modules actually affect the post-study work visa?
Yeah, thank you, Sakshi. Recently, the Australian government has announced changes that if you study online courses and you have got a visa, then they will include that in the post-study work permit. The second part, I would say, was that what is the scholarship, what the Australian university is offering. So a lot of universities have reduced the fees. A lot of universities are offering scholarship. A lot of universities have also given options to study to just do 2 subjects in 1 semester and do 2 subjects in the next semester. So it is half course which they are charging right now. And there are options like, for example, at UTS InSearch, there is a provision that if you like the study, you can get, if you do not like the study, you can get refund also. And if you have done a semester and if you've got a mark sheet, then we don't refund. So a lot of universities are working on options what students want to do. For example, Navitas has just introduced that if you study for 21 days free with us, if you don't like, you will get full refund, though there are some conditions attached to it. But a lot of universities are changing the scenario, seeing what student is, and the subcontinent market, as I told you earlier, is a very price-driven, scholarship-driven market. So students are looking at these options. The government has also announced for the master's courses, where in Australia the rule is a 2-year study gives you 2-year work permit. So there they have said that if you do 16 months of study in Australia in onshore, then you will still get the work permit, which was also there earlier. So now the only condition which has changed recently, which was slightly late, is that you have to get a visa to start your online study, and that is being counted towards the post-study work permit. So there have been changes. The universities are changing, but there has been slow. But the government is also trying to help the universities. So there is a thought process in all the universities that what we can offer. So there can be more scholarships, or they can get refunds easily. So there is a talk among all the universities, I would say. And Australia is trying to increase the number of students which were there. And obviously the post-COVID has given a lot of thinking to all of us. For example, the September intake is there. UTS has announced a November intake also, which is a new intake. And the popular courses from Indian subcontinent like IT, engineering, business, healthcare have been introduced. So the student has the option to join the November intake. Obviously, a lot of things will depend on when the flights open, when the borders open. And as Atitra also said, that there are issues that how the foreign people will be taking into the existence, that people are coming from COVID countries like India, where the cases are around 21 lakh as of now, which is increasing by the day. So unless a vaccine comes, I am not too sure what will happen, but there's a lot of uncertainty. I think the word correct is, as of now, uncertain times.
Absolutely.
So everybody is trying their best, all the universities across the world, because international student for Australia is like 4th or 5th in the economy, contributor for GDP. So everybody's trying their best. So let's hope for the vaccine to come fast.
Right. So as Mr. Pankaj said that, Australian universities, of course, if they are not 100% there, they are making continuous efforts in terms of slashing down the tuition fees, providing additional scholarships, or basically helping the students as much as they can so that they can avail the post-study visa. Shivani, over to you. How would you say the situation is in UK in terms of charging the fees? And if you do think that the universities are charging a complete fees for the online courses, if you could elaborate on why the universities are doing that, because that's a question. Here we have about 1,000 career coaches watching this, so they all want to know that basically, how do we tell the students that what are the advantages or what are the reasons that the universities are charging this full fees? So if you can elaborate on that.
Thanks, Sakshi. I think it's a great point. Having been an international student myself, I can understand that it is definitely a financial pressure on not just us, but our parents, who are possibly our sponsors for continuing our education. Couple of pointers here. I think similar to Ireland, but maybe, not the best way that Nilanjala said. The UK has also actually reacted fairly decently to the pandemic. They did start the lockdown a bit late, but however, since July, the economy started opening up, and God willing, we haven't seen a spike in cases. The number of cases and the death rate has drastically fallen in the last 6 weeks, which is a positive sign. The economies have started opening up. People have started going back to work. The London Underground system is back to normal. So slowly, I think people are accepting and appreciating this new way of living, where you need to wear a face mask, you need to adhere to social distancing. I think it's all about change. I mean, whenever, for any one of us, even you and I, if we are told to do something differently, we always like, no, this is not possible. But I think time is a great healer, and it enables us to, kind of switch from what we felt is not possible to look at it from a more holistic perspective. As far as the UK is considered, and I'll speak for the sector in general, we have introduced lots of COVID hardship scholarships, which have been not very large in terms of the value, but they've been large in the quantity of it. So it can help a larger audience. So for example, at Brunel, we did a £1,500 COVID scholarship up till 31st of July. I know University of Westminster did something similar. So people have taken initiatives to kind of help students. Having said that, I think across the UK, most of us are offering a 100% deposit refund policy if the student has a change of heart or a change of mind of traveling to the UK. The UK is not encouraging online learning entirely. So I want to clarify that the UK actually is welcoming you to come to the UK, whichever city you want to study in, and take the experience of the campus. So yes, we can't have 100% face-to-face classes, and that's purely because of social distancing. For no other reason. But at the same time, campuses are open, campus services are open, your libraries are open, your labs are open. Earlier, what would happen was a student could just walk into the library whenever they like. Now there's a bit of organization. Students would be asked to book a slot of to when they want to go to the library or use a lab facility. I think that's going to teach us a lot of organization skills as well to Indian students, I think, which is great because it's going to help you when you're applying for jobs as well. I think that kind of flexibility is extremely, I think at par in terms of the quality of education as well. So a discount comes into play when, the entire year has to be taught online. From the UK perspective, we are ready to welcome you from September. Most universities in the UK have delayed the intake by like mid-September to about October, late September. A lot of us have introduced most of our popular courses with a January intake. So there are lots of opportunities, and I think the quality of teaching, most UK universities are giving an assurance of quality of teaching. So similar to what Mr. Jain said, students are enrolled onto a program and they feel, they're not getting the best academic, learning experience. They can, of course, kind of apply for a refund within a certain time frame, which is typically about 14 days into your program. So there's lots of stuff that the UK is doing. And I think with the post-study work visa, so the UK BI had announced that as long as you enter the UK by 6th of April 2021, which is typically your final semester, you would be eligible for the GIR if you're a postgraduate student. If you're an undergraduate student, you have no deadline because you've got a 3-year course. And by the time, and we hope, I know there's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of negativity around us, but I think that's what COVID wanted to do to us. So all the more we should say we will beat it together. And I think we all have. I would have never imagined to have connected with so many people through a virtual platform 6 months before. So I think this is giving us an opportunity to open our mindset and to adapt to a new world and, and kind of appreciate it. So I think there's a lot to offer, there's a lot to do, and students are taking this year as an opportunity to upskill themselves. Some are taking an opportunity to reskill and the others are taking an option to upskill themselves so that they are better ready for the job market in the near future. And like the Great Depression, the UK recession in 2011, everything is time bound, nothing stays forever. So I think we should appreciate that, and I think we should go with a positive thought, and we should take in as much as we can during this time.
All right. Thank you, Shivani and Mr. Pankaj. I think they've thrown a good light about that, how I think universities, not just in UK or Australia, but basically across all countries, are being supportive of students in terms of either giving them scholarship, giving them flexible joining dates, or, having them give 100% refund. And I've, of course, come across universities who are without any hesitation asking the students if they want to defer their program for next year due to financial hardships, etc. So I think all universities are definitely doing that. And like Mr. Pankaj said, that these are absolute uncertain times. Some things are going to come with time because nobody has all the answers. Aritra, continuing with this conversation, I think, there has been a huge difference that I have seen in the approach for undergrad and postgraduate students specifically. As I see, undergrad students are less worried in terms of doing an online education and joining in later, solely because of the fact that they still have 3 years more or 2 years more to stay on the campus, to make most of it, and assuming that after 2 years the situation is still going to be all right in terms of jobs and everything. But for students going for their master's courses, there has been an absolute downfall in terms of recruitment, because the main aim for most postgrad students is that after studying a 1 year or a 2-year degree, they would want to get a job. So do you have any suggestions for such students? Firstly, more than suggestion, do you have any take on that? Are jobs really going to be impacted? Or maybe if students can choose certain industries where jobs are likely not to get much affected, if you can throw some light on that, please.
Sure. I think, just to start on this entire conversation about that, students should also understand that these measures which are taken by the governments or the universities are also for their own safety. So it is not about, that the government rules are only for their residents or the people who are living there. So it's also for their own safety. Coming back to the jobs perspective, that what's going to happen. I graduated in 2008, where the depression and recession happened, so it was, and I was in the UK, my bank's accounts were about to be seized. So it was crazy times, but I will say that every, uncertain times also throw an opportunity. So I completely concur with Shivani that this is the right time to actually upskill or reskill. There are job losses happening pretty much in every sector. So this is a good time to go back to school, especially for master students, I'm saying. And that's why the master students are more, worried in this entire situation. And the second point is, for students who are going for September 2020 or January 2021, I don't think you guys should be worried that much. The guys who are going to be extremely worried are the ones who are graduating in September 2020, rather than the guys who are going to graduate or have a master's degree in 2021 or even later, because Australia has 2 years, US has a couple of years. So I think by that time world will heal and world will become a different place. The only point that students should understand that because I've worked in corporate recruitment as well, that only thing is that after any recession or any unnatural kind of these kind of things, there's a little bit of thing about that you need to be skilled in what you do. So when economy is booming and economy goes all right, then there's a lot of demand for jack of all trades. But when things go a little down, then the demand goes back to master of one. So whatever subject you are actually learning, learn that to the best of your abilities, and also start understanding the way of life that we are going to. There are a lot of Indian students who go to UK, Ireland, Australia, and they want to mingle with their own populations. I'm from Hyderabad, I'll just mingle with Hyderabadis. I'm from Pune, I'll just mingle with the guys from Pune. Don't do it. This is the right time. This is the only time actually to go out and network with your peers, network with people who are there, not only in your college, but also join in conferences, join into, networking groups. So I think overall, it's not that difficult because it is a disease and it will go. There's a vaccine or something. When an economic recession hits, sometimes even the largest economists in the world, they don't have a solution for this, but there is a vaccine in down the corner. So I think people will get over this. And the only thing is that also think that there will be a little bit of challenge for you. It won't be as easy as your peers. People talk about the 2 years back, these guys got all jobs and everything. So I think please be aware that this is a new normal, and try to adapt yourself to the best of your abilities to this new normal.
Right. Thank you, Aritra, for that. Nilanjana, I would want to ask you, and we've been getting in a couple of questions. So, as we know that Ireland, a lot of UK and European nations, they are the hub for pharmaceutical, medical, technology. So would you suggest students in this current scenario to target some specific industries which you think, particularly in your region, would not have much impact on jobs, or certain sectors that would actually create more jobs? So do you have any take on that?
Well, I would like to begin by saying that when students decide to go overseas, irrespective of what destination that they choose, whenever they decide to go overseas for their higher education, they automatically, sign up for stepping outside of their comfort zone. And that decision itself is the foundation of building adaptability and building flexibility into their career plans, which in turn prepares them to overcome any challenge that might come up in the long term. Now, if you look at it objectively, the post-COVID era is not going to be the first time that the job market will be different. It will not be the first time that the economy would have changed. Regardless of whether or not there is another pandemic like this one in our lifetimes, something or the other is going to happen that will change the game again and again. Now, if you look maybe 3 or 4 months back, who could have seen COVID coming this way and affecting us on a global scale? But like all changes and like all challenges, this crisis has also brought about its own set of lessons. And one key learning is to expect and to be as prepared as possible for the unexpected. And I would think the best way to do this is through innovation and research. At Trinity, these elements are inherent to our way of education, be it teaching or be it learning. So for example, at Trinity, we have a capstone project, which is a core component of our programs, whether undergraduate or postgraduate. And this project is directly linked to a real industry or research project, and it provides our students the opportunity to put into personal practice the knowledge and skills that they acquire throughout their study program. And this capstone project also determines our students' career path in terms of the kind of employers, the kind of job profiles, and also the starting salaries. In addition to that, on a general basis, I would think that we cannot overemphasize the importance of transferable skills. like critical thinking, like problem solving, analytical reasoning, independent research, presentation, and communication skills. So instead of thinking about the career outcomes per se, what students should be doing is to be more discerning about their choices in terms of the destinations as well as the kind of institution that they're going to, the kind of program that they're signing up for, and see how that fits with their career plans. As long as they join a good university, they join the right program, their career path will take the shape. So again, going back to Trinity, we enable our students to develop a range of key graduate attributes that will enable them to build and maintain career readiness or employability, irrespective of the market dynamics or challenges. And I'm sure this is true of all good institutions. They would enable the students to be able to think independently, to be able to act responsibly, to communicate effectively, and also to continue to develop continuously. These are the kinds of things that will empower our graduates to be able to think creatively, to be able to adapt to changes, deal effectively with ambiguity, and also gain the confidence to take measured risks. These are the kind of things that we can actually prepare them from. No one can predict what the future employment scenario is going to be like, or generally what is going to be the trend. But what we can definitely counsel them is to make the right choice of the institution and the program and give it their best in terms of their academic pursuits. And having said that, all good institutions also have career services which will enable the students again with their career planning, and that should help them to be job ready at the end of their program.
All right. Thank you, Nilanjana. Anju, coming to you, I would want you to please address this major issue that students are having, specifically for a country like USA, where a lot of top universities do ask for a lot of standardized examinations like SAT, GRE, GMAT, etc. And as of now, students are facing a huge problem in terms that none of those exams are really happening. So do you have any take on that are universities being more flexible in terms of waiving of those requirements? And do you have any information as to if these exams are going to happen anytime soon, whether it's the IELTS examination? I do know that a lot of universities are being open to the IELTS indicator exam or the Duolingo exam. But as far as GRE, SAT, GMAT are considered in Indian centers, do we see them happening in the month of, say, September, October, November? What would be your take on that?
Well, true. Of course, this particular situation has thrown a lot of challenges towards us. And one of the challenges is to not being able to write their school examination, university examination, and of course, standardized examinations like SATs, ACTs, which are really important part of university admission in US, GRE and GMAT as well, right? So of course, lots of challenges. So what I would say is what I know so far. I've been talking to my colleagues at College Board, and they have said that, of course, SAT is going online. So they would be planning to conduct SAT examinations apparently online, every month. And then we are talking about GRE as well. If you want to know more about how it would be conducted, of course, ETS would be having more information on how to go about the whole things. But now coming to the changes, of course, since a lot of universities understand the situation Indian students are in, they would be definitely taking a lot of measures to ensure that they are less affected by the situation, and they are definitely delaying the admissions date, they are extending the admission date and things like that. So of course, in our university too, as well as in many other US university, any which ways, when I talk about Arizona, SATs or ACT is not a mandatory requirement. So these tests are required only if you want to apply for some funding, which we give in abundance. We have one of the most liberal scholarship schemes in the US. We give up to $35,000 per year for next 4 years, and the fees is about $37,000. So that is where things are. So of course it is not a mandatory, but when we talk about the masters, GRE, GMAT is most of the time a mandatory requirements for most of the US university courses and things like that. So what you really need to basically do is, my suggestion is, some universities are waiving it off. Some universities are asking you to probably take them later, right, and apply without those. So the best advice would be to check with the individual universities whether GRE, GMAT is required or waived. Or in our university also, I won't remember on top of my head, because some departments are saying we don't need it, and the others is saying that of course we're delaying the submission. So of course things like that are being introduced. But at an undergrad level, as you rightly said, we also have introduced Duolingo, which would be accepted at an undergraduate level, not at a master's level at this point, but maybe in the future. And some universities are accepting Duolingo for undergrad and postgrads too. So there's a big kind of situation. I know it could be sounding very confusing at this moment, but the best thing would be to ensure that you write these examination as and when they are scheduled, because that would definitely enhance your chances of getting funding, be it an undergraduate level or a postgrad level, as and when. And of course, considering that the deadlines would be extended, you will have enough time. So don't panic, guys. There would be enough time for you to prepare and write these examinations, in my personal view.
All right. Thank you, Anju. And before we move on to the question answer round, just to summarize what our panelists have, said till now, that of course, there is a lot of uncertainty, but we are, moving towards more of a organized approach. Universities are being very helpful in every way, whether it's about, giving scholarships, it's about giving you options for deferment, whether it's about, asking you to join it at a later date and do online classes till the time your country is not allowing you to venture out. Over and all, yes, of course, situation is a little uncertain, but that's not only in this segment, that's going to be there everywhere. We'll have to accept it no matter what industry it is, and it's going to have to become a part of our daily lives. So you don't have to worry about much. And of course, I completely agree that now is the time to actually, upskill yourself, reskill yourself. And I've been saying that for a very long time, that it becomes important for you to go to good institutions, whether it's in India or abroad, which are technologically abled, which actually provide you with the larger skill set that you need in today's time. If COVID has done anything positive, it's just that it's brought in technology 5 years advanced to India, and a lot of us are realizing that some of the traditional schools and universities that we have out there are facing a lot of problems. So yes, this is the time to also rethink the kind of school and the kind of institution you would want to go in for your further education. And of course, we'll keep informing you as and when we get more information about how the sector is doing. Now, if any of you have questions specifically for any of the panelists, we just have, I think, about 7-8 more minutes. So please feel free to shoot out any questions that you have for our panelists, and they'll be happy to answer that.
So attendees, if you have any questions, you can shoot your questions in the chat box so that the panelists can answer your questions.
Sakshi, I can see loads of them in quick Q&A. If you want to have a look,
that's
there are 20 odd questions there.
I think there is a question regarding that how much I need to score in IELTS, GRE, GMAT for a full postgraduate funding. So anybody that wants to take that up?
I can answer, because GRE, when we talk about, mostly is acceptable in US. So I can say that when we talk about the scholarships, it is not entirely dependent on a GRE scores. Some courses would need GRE, some wouldn't. So, right. So when we talk about the funding in US, especially, we are talking about research and teaching assistantships anyways. So having a good GRE or a GMAT scores would definitely increase your chances of getting scholarships, for example, but it would also be based on the holistic your profile of a student, be it an interview, be it your GPA, which is generally about 3.5, something which would be acceptable on a scale of 4. So yes, GRE, GMAT, IELTS, your interview, and your whole profile, be it your work experience, academic performance, would also be taken into consideration. Most of the institutions would follow that while deciding their scholarships.
I think, Anju, your voice is cracking up a little bit. Yeah, Anju, I think your voice was
Oh, is
cracking
it?
up a little bit.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that.
No worries out there. I'll just, take one or two more questions I think I have there. I think we are getting a lot of queries, guys, in terms of that which masters is the best. I think if my panelists do agree with me, there is no right answer to that which MS is really the best. I think there is no foolproof guarantee to that if you do this MS, you will get a guaranteed job. It has to be a larger planning in terms of what your skills, interests, abilities are. What I can say about this is that, almost all fields have a great scope. So please don't look into your MS and masters in terms of that, okay, this masters will have a job, that's why I'll go through this. I think you need to do a larger introspection into that. So in terms of, I think we have a query, if any of you would want to take that, which are the countries, maybe Shivani or Mr. Pankaj, you can take that. Which are the countries that do not need any IELTS, GRE, GMAT examination?
Sure, thanks, Sakshi. I want to add actually to something that you said earlier because I actually really liked it. I think students mostly, back in the day we used to feel, oh, let's not do a typical business degree, let's not do a marketing degree. It's very generic. I may not get a job. And I think in the pandemic, we all realized that $1 million businesses have only thrived because of digital marketing. Subjects like supply chain and logistics. I mean, we all were delivered our, essentials, our groceries because of that. So I think, you're right. There's no right or wrong answer there. I think everything that you do, you should excel at it, no matter what it is. Of course, STEM subjects or anything related to medical sciences will, thrive and shine out because of the need of the hour. And I think I really liked again what Aritra said was it is a virus. It is just another ailment, guys. We will get out of it. We just need time. Even the best scientists in the world cannot create magic in a day. So we just need to give it some time. Thanks actually for the UK. I think a lot of us, kind of have been extremely flexible with the English language requirement. So from being flexible of, kind of waiving off the IELTS requirement, depending on what they have scored in English in their grade 12, we have definitely considered that. We've also been open to taking Duolingo, IELTS Indicator, PTE. In fact, at Brunel University in London, we organized our very own English language test completely free of charge for all our offer holders. So I think that was a very comforting factor for students. As long as they had an offer with us, they could take the English language test, and that was UKVI approved, and they would have no hassles in getting their visa. Similar to myself, I think all UK universities have been very sensitive to this fact, and I think they've offered as much as flexibility as possible. So there could be IELTS waivers depending on, of course, your academic grades in your class 12. So I can't give you a general statement here, but of course we could surely look into it when a case arises.
All right, thank you. I think we are running out of time, and in the question and answer session, I can see that there are very score specific questions. So what I'll do is that I think all of our panelists have, dropped in their contact details. So in case you have some queries which you want to directly ask them, I think it would be better if you can directly, email them about it, because it's not going to be possible due to the lack of time to answer every query out there. So in case the panelists, if you've not dropped in your contact information, and if you wish to do that, you can do that in the chat section. And alternatively, I am just quickly sharing my screen. Can you guys see my screen, please?
Yes.
Yes, so you can quickly take a screenshot. If you have questions for any of the specific panelists, you can feel free to shoot me an email, WhatsApp me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to direct those questions to them, whether it's about any specific career abroad query or any of the universities. We'll be more than happy to do that. And I would like to thank all the lovely panelists for joining us on their busy schedule on a Sunday. It indeed was an insightful session. A big thank you to 3G Institute of Policy and Research Studies. This is something wonderful that we all are doing. And thank you so much again, and I hope to connect with you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Sakshi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
So thank you for the note, ma'am. So heartfelt thanks to all the panelists. There are no words that can convey our awe and respect for Ms. Sakshi Mittal, Ms. Anju Singh, Ms. Pankaj Jain, Mr. Aritra Ghoshal, Ms. Shivani Balla, and finally, Ms. Nilanjana Shen. We would like to, however, take this opportunity to thank you all for such informative and distinct thought and views on the future of international higher education. Thank you all so much for such an important and healthy discussion and for sharing this knowledge with us. We have e-certificate for all the panelists for taking part in today's panel discussion, and we'll display the certificate here. So I'd like to present the certificates to Ms. Sakshi Mittal. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence.
Thank you so much for that.
Next, we'll be presenting our certificate to Mr. Pankaj Jain. Thank you, sir. And next, we'll be presenting to Ms. Nilanjana Shen. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for participating. And next, we'll be welcoming Mr. Aritra Ghoshal. Thank you for your presence, sir. And next, we'll be thanking Shivani Balla. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence. And next, we'll be thanking Anju Singh. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. Thank you once again. And now I'll hand it over to MC Tamil.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. I would like to once again thank all the panelists who have taken part in this. And thanks for your valuable time.